Okay, Krishnan, I will initiate the webinar. You may wait for 1 minute and then start.
Okay. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're attending from. It gives me immense pleasure in welcoming you to the first webinar of 2022 on MOSIP 1.2 LTS, codename Asymmetric Amoeba. I am Krishnan, Head of Country Implementations with MOSIP, and I will be your host today. We have an interesting lineup of agenda items today. We will start with a MOSIP program update by Professor Rajagopalan, President MOSIP. We will then get on to a detailed discussion on 1.2 in form of a fireside chat with an expert group of panel members. At the end, we will conclude the webinar with a demonstration of one of the core features of 1.2 called multi-language support. At any point, if you have any questions, I request you to type it down in the question box. We will try to answer as many questions as possible today. I believe we will have sufficient time. We may take some questions in between. Some questions we may prefer to answer at the end. If any questions go unanswered, I guarantee that we will send you an email with the questions that have gone unanswered. We'll answer those questions. Now, without taking any more time, let me call upon Professor Rajagopalan for the MOSIP program update. Over to you, Professor.
Thank you, Krishnan. Welcome all the participants to this interesting webinar. As you all aware that MOSIP, Modular Open Source Identity Platform, actually started 4 years ago in 2018. And our goal at that time was to create in the open source a platform for issuing digital identity to citizens of the countries or the residents of the countries who do not have digital identity till then. Out of the 7 billion population of the world, in 2018, about 2 billion did not have digital identity, and another 2 billion had some form of digital identity but were unable to use it due to a lot of technical and other issues. So our journey was to provide an open source, a complete secure privacy protected platform which countries could make use of, and not only provide digital identity to their citizens and residents, but also use that platform as a foundation on which number of other services could be provided to the citizens from the government. And that was the goal. And when we started this in 2018, we had said in 3 years, we will reach 2 countries and try to support the countries in implementation of MOSIP. So if you really look at our journey in the last 4 years, we had less than a year, by July 2019, we had the first alpha version of the open source code for the entire platform. And we tested it, worked on it, and improved it further. And then by February 2020, we released the version 1.0 for general availability. And countries have started experimenting with it in the sandboxes, pilot projects, and some of them have also started issuing UI and unique identity number using this platform. And 2 countries came forward quite rapidly. One was Philippines, which said that yes, we will use MOSIP and we would start it start issuing the identity towards the end of 2020 and beginning of 2021. And so Philippines was the first country to go live, then Morocco was another next country to go live, and both these countries now are implementing the MOSIP platform. By July 2020, we had the version 1.1, and based on the field experiences in Philippines and Morocco, and also field experiences in the pilot projects which we were having at Sri Lanka, Guinea, Ethiopia, and Togo, we improved that platform significantly. You will be told about what are the improvements, what new features, how is it now much more stable, much more secure, and much more managed consents, etc. in today's webinar. And we finally released this long-term support version, which is what we call as 1.2. Long-term support. We would be able to provide support on this version for next 3 to 5 years for any country that might adopt this version. And 1.2 was released this year, February, and today is the seminar which we are webinar we are having, where you will be told about the new features in this version and why is it more stable, why countries can adopt it. And I want to stress here that we continue to be a not-for-profit organization. We function out of an university. The International Institute of Information Technology, Bangalore, where we are located, is a university in this country, and we function out of the university ecosystem. And we, as any university, our university is also not-for-profit, and so MOSIP is not-for-profit. We do not charge any country or any other partners who work with us for any services we provide, either for training or for knowledge transfer or for providing the code and supporting them, and etc. And we will continue to be in open source. And that is our thing. And we are continuing to be in open source. And as the years go by, we have some ideas for MOSIP version 2. And that also today, Ramesh and others, Sasi and others will tell you what is MOSIP 2.0 is likely to be, which might come in a year or two. But we have lots of ideas for that, but all of them will be in the open source. And I would like to end by saying that this journey is very interesting, exciting, and we would count upon your support, your contribution, and your ideas in strengthening MOSIP in the years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Professor, for your kind words and setting the tone for this webinar. Okay, so moving on, let's move on to the fireside chat. We have our esteemed panel ready for the fireside chat. Let me call upon Sasikumar Ganeshan. Let me introduce the panel members first so you get to know them better, and then before I really get on to a list of questions and start chatting with them. Sasi has been with MOSIP for more than 2 years now, and actually is a very familiar face for many of you, I believe. He has been leading the MOSIP development activities right from the first MOSIP release, and has been the person behind many successful releases leading to 1.2. So if you have been using many of the features that are in MOSIP now, you could actually have Sasi's virtual name in MOSIP. Anyway, he is a technology champion and has several years of experience with foundational ID systems, especially in the area of security and privacy. Welcome, Sasi. Good to have you here.
Thanks, Krishna.
Yeah. We also have Ramesh Narayanan. Many of you might know Ramesh already through various interactions. Ramesh is our Chief Technology Officer with MOSIP. He has been advising MOSIP and working very closely with MOSIP engineering team on various technologies, use cases, and helping the team with several years of very rich technical experience in product design and delivery. He's also closely connected and associated with several working groups in the ID space. And also many of the standards that you see in MOSIP, he is in some of the standards committee. And also, he's also been partnering with some of the technology folks around the world. And he's very deeply immersed in defining the next version of MOSIP. Okay. Pleasure to have you, Ramesh. Welcome.
Thank you, Krishna. Hello, everyone.
Okay. Our third panel member is Mr. Nagarajan Santhanam. We call him Naga. Naga is the Chief Dissemination Officer in MOSIP. He takes care of country engagement, helping countries to adopt MOSIP from pilot to production. That includes things like deployment and building a community of system integrators, partners, like biometric partners, ecosystem players, and stuff like that. It's a very, very critical role from an engagement point of view. We call it dissemination in MOSIP. Before joining MOSIP, Naga was based out of Africa for about 9 years, holding various executive positions and leadership positions, including a role of a group CIO in a leading Pan-African bank. Happy to have you, Naga. Welcome.
Thank you, Krish. Hello, everyone.
Okay. So, gentlemen, before I really get on to the chat part of it, first of all, let me congratulate you for the MOSIP 1.2 release. All of you have played a very instrumental and very critical roles in shaping it. I'm sure many engineers and many bright minds have been with you in this journey, and a lot of community members have also contributed to the success of MOSIP. Good job and congratulations again.
Thank you, Krishnan.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, let me start with you, Naga, because you are a country-facing person and you have the first-hand information on what is really happening in the field, right? So, how do you see 1.2 from a country engagement and dissemination point of view? Like, for example, what do you think? Why do you think it is a significant release when compared to its predecessors?
Thank you, Krishnan. 1.2 is the first long-term support release, that has gone in since the inception of MOSIP. This is not a simple, technology upgrade or just a feature set upgrade release alone. Okay, like Professor demonstrated in his slide, we have gathered the experience of working with 6 different countries now for various rollouts and pilots. We have taken significant inputs in all those rollouts and implementations and pilots and shaped 1.2, according to that. We have also consulted with a lot of, industry experts in the ID space and also biometric SI and biometric, partners and other experts throughout the globe, before we could really, arrive at the feature set, for the 1.2 release. So I would say that but the 1.2 is more business driven, rather than, driving from the technology side. That makes it extremely significant. And also this 1.2, the long-term support release, will be supported for the next, 3 to 5 years time, which gives a lot of confidence to the countries to adopt and to continue with MOSIP on a long-term basis.
Thank you, Naga. Maybe I want to extend that question with one more additional thing. You said 1.2 always carries this additional tag of LTS, long-term support, right? For the benefit of people here, can you explain a little bit more on what LTS means? I know everybody understands what LTS is from a support point of view, but from MOSIP point of view, if you can give a few more details of how countries may get benefited out of LTS, that will be very helpful.
LTS stands for long-term support version. This means to say that if a country adopts the LTS version, they will get support from MOSIP for the next 3 to 5 years. All the upgrades, all the patches, all the tooling, additional tooling, everything will be included as part of that. So this gives a confidence to the country in adopting MOSIP as their ID system, because 3 to 5 years of support for a particular release is extremely substantial in industry standards.
Yeah, it is.
So yeah.
Thank you, Naga. Thanks for that, and please stay back. There may be a few additional questions that will come back to you. Over to you, Ramesh. See, you have been shepherding MOSIP release in the capacity of a CTO right from the first release, right? So, and you are a technologist. From a technology perspective, and also from the perspective of the MOSIP technology stack, what do you think were the key challenges that were actually conquered in 1.2?
It's been an interesting journey. As Naga rightly pointed out, we have been getting tremendous feedback from the field over the last couple of years. Right, since our 1.0 release, we have been working towards getting into a very robust, scalable solution and making sure that all our core principles that we had adopted, like modularity, privacy, security, scalability, no lock-in, interoperability, all these are achieved at optimum levels. While it still continues to be a journey, we have, I believe, addressed a lot of this. Another major aspect has been the manageability of the software itself. The platform is now much more easier to deploy and operate and maintain. So the challenges have been primarily around scale and manageability and integration and interoperability, right? We have modular in our name, and we want to make sure that it's truly modular. And what is the right shape and size of these modules is something that we have been discovering through our implementations in the field.
Yeah, interesting, Ramesh. So just want to remind, for the benefit of our audience, people who have joined just now, please use the Q&A button to ask any questions. I will make sure that these questions are routed to the panel members and they'll be answered. Thank you. Sasi, you are the engineering head for MOSIP, and you've been driving the engineering activities. Can you tell me, or can you tell us? We are all eager to know what are the new features that have been new features and enhancements that have gone into MOSIP 1.2. Some of us, I'm sure, some of the folks here might have already used MOSIP in one way or other, but they want to know what is there in 1.2.
Sure, Krishnan. I think 1.2 carries quite a lot of features that came as a feedback from the countries and the pilots that we ran across. While we do have set of features that we wanted to incorporate, but I think we did quite a lot of feedback gathering from the countries, and then we imported quite a lot of information from them in terms of understanding how on the field people can actually deliver an ID. So for example, if you look at our multi-language support, I think we have multi-language support somewhere from 1.3 onwards. We have ran pilots from 1.3 onwards in multiple countries. But our predominant aim of multi-language at that point in time looked at having two languages at a point in time with two panels and shown up there. And when we started working with the Sri Lankan team, I think Dawson is here as well. Thanks, Dawson, for being here. When we started working with the Sri Lankan team, we realized it's not going to be just two languages. It's going to be N languages, and there are people who are attached to their languages, and an identity is completely without a soul if the language is not attached to the identity that you provide, right? Language plays a vital role, whether the information, whether the things that we collect from Sri Lanka or in the African market. Then we realized we should not be limiting with two languages. And that was a limitation that we have artificially enforced into our system. And we worked hard to actually bring it out, and we started moving away from it. And today, happily, we could say that we literally support N languages, and people could configure these languages. There are some transliteration work that people have to do for it, but it's a very, very minimal work compared to what you need to achieve. And it absolutely supports quite a lot of languages. That's a learning that we obtained from the field. There are several such learnings that we got, but this is something that is a good learning that we got from the field, from a country and working with them, and we were able to incorporate that feature into 1.2. And we could talk about so many other features that we brought in, but this is something very important that I would like to talk about.
Sure. And I think you talked about multi-language support. I think immediately after this Fireside Chat, we are actually going to have a demo of the multi-language support that is there in 1.2. So that will be very interesting to see. Anyway. Okay, good. So let me come back to you, Naga. See, I know that 1.2 is not an overnight project, right? Many weeks of a lot of hard work that have gone into 1.2 to make it stable. and support ready. So according to you, we would like to understand how did 1.2 really get culminated together, right? And what were the key field learnings that have gone into the making of 1.2 LTS?
Yeah. Like I mean, as you have seen the slide, Professor projected, we have come through quite a bit of a journey from the time we started MOSIP, right? We have had quite a lot of wish list during that time. We really shortlisted the wish list, and whichever is extremely critical and important, we incorporated in 1.2. And like all of us were talking, I mean, we took substantial inputs, from all the 6 countries. Thanks to all the countries and the stakeholders who provided all the feedback into it. And Sashi hit the nail in the head by putting in the multi-language support. I mean, which we didn't even think about, when we started MOSIP. We were always thinking about single and dual language support. But as we interacted with countries more and more, the multi-language support, came into existence. I mean, one more key facility, that we explored as part of this is an anonymous profiling facility. Thanks to Philippines for really being very persistent on that particular functionality, and we have incorporated that as part of our platform. We have also substantially improved the customization capability, modules of MOSIP. Which was not that great, when the first version of MOSIP was released. And thanks to all the countries and the SIs, for this again. I mean, their feedback were very, very helpful, in improving in all those aspects of the platform development. There are n number of other points, like onboarding of partners in a pretty swift way and in an independent way. Enhancement of admin portal, and improvement, and quite a lot of bug fixes and performance improvement has gone into the system. And again, thanks to the countries, Morocco and Philippines, for this. Quite a lot has really gone into the system on those aspects. And as we speak now, we can easily do 200+ of registrations, UIN generations per day, using MOSIP systems. There are n number of learnings, that we can keep on speaking, but these are some of the key things, I would like to highlight as part of the learning we had.
Yeah, Naga, I do agree, because an ID system is a complex system, and it cannot be. It's just not out of the box, deployed, and everything is working out of the blue. I mean, everything goes through a learning, and every country is different in terms of its capabilities, its legal systems, and stuff like that, right? So yeah, well said. Ramesh, back to you. Something interesting, see, I know that from MOSIP point of view, MOSIP is all about adherence to open standards, open source technologies. We have heard about that. What can you talk about standards when it comes to 1.2 release? Are there any specific changes that have happened in 1.2 release in particular?
Yeah, standards is always an ongoing journey, and there's plenty of learning there. Everybody knows that we started with biometric standards, ISO standards for representing the biometrics, and CBEF and so on. But what we have added is, on the consumption side, we have added support for verifiable credentials, which is a W3C based standard, which is used widely in a variety of imaginations of ID solutions, like right from self-sovereign identity to distributed IDs to centralized IDs and functional IDs. Verifiable credentials are playing a role. In fact, plenty of vaccination certificates are also actually using this technology of late. Right, so verifiable credentials has been a major support addition. We incorporated this about a year and a half ago. But the standard also has been evolving, and we have been keeping up to date with that. And now our credential issue right now actually adheres to the latest verifiable credential standards. In addition to this, we also have apart from adopting existing standards, one of the major wins has been our secure biometric interface standards, which actually has been supported by our ecosystem wonderfully. We now have close to 40 plus devices, which device bouquets, I would say, not even devices, device bouquets from various manufacturers which comply with these. And this has been really exciting, and we are now working on making this as a formal standard also. And as I said, it's an ongoing journey. We are now looking at evolving standards where they are missing. This includes in the areas of federation of identity, which can allow cross-border usage, how ID can be used with mobile applications, and sharing of ID can be easily achieved, right, in the ecosystem. So there are the ecosystem has been very mature. Like ID is not new. There have been solutions for 30, 40 years in this, but there has been a lot of fragmentation, and there's always continuous innovation also happening. And standardization, I believe, will bring in lots of harmony and interoperability and start unlocking the power of all these various solutions out there. So that our focus is on how to actually enable very easy usage of ID in a very standard way, so that it brings in less confusion for the end consumer. As I think we have to focus on the consumer rather than the issuer. So the verifiable credentials, our mobile ID solutions, all these focus on that.
Thank you, Ramesh. There are three interesting questions that have come from the audience. I want to take them because they're very relevant to what we are discussing now. There's one question. It's interesting. Naga, if you'd like to take from an Africa perspective, the question is, what is the appetite for MOSIP in Africa? With the ID for Africa initiative that has been talked about, have you, as MOSIP, done any significant activities in some of the major African nations?
Yeah, the number speaks for itself. That's how I always take it. I can very boldly say that we have a very, very close pipeline of 6 to 7 countries, for MOSIP as we speak. I mean, at this point in time, I may not be able to name the countries, but the pipeline is extremely strong. I get calls from countries at least, from at least bi-weekly basis from a different countries, in West Africa and other parts of Africa. So people are recognizing the fact that an open source platform for an ID, is really fantastic, and people also go by the success stories, we have, in Philippines and Morocco and conducted in the various different regions. So this by itself shows that there is a lot of interest, from different countries adopting MOSIP.
Yeah. And just to add to that, for information, my dear friends, some of us will be in ID for Africa event this year. It's happening on June 14th and 15th. Just in case, if you happen to be there, we'll be very happy to meet and talk to you. Right. Okay, good. That question was from Kiran Rao. Thank you, Kiran, for that question. Now, Frank Harsey wants to know a little bit more about anonymous profiling. Sasi, you talked about, I think, Naga, you talked about anonymous profiling as part of one of the questions. So Frank Harsey wants to understand a bit more about anonymous profiling facility and why it is important to Philippines. I think it's not just Philippines, it's any country for that matter. Sasi, do you want to take that question?
Sure, Krishnan, not a problem. So I think if you've used our system, you would realize the privacy and the security plays a big vital role within our system. And as a part of it, one of the things that we have done very early in the product is to concentrate heavily on data security. And every data that you look at in our database about any PAI information, you would see it absolutely encrypted with the technology specifically driven and designed by MOSIP in the open source. Obviously, it uses the same cryptographic principles, uses the known cryptographic algorithms, proven ones across the market space, but it's extremely heavily encrypted. And one of the biggest challenges when running in Philippines, or for that sake any country, but this learning came from there, was that the reporting to understand how many people are enrolled, how many males, how many females, how many child, what kind of people seem to be coming into what kind of locations. There seems to be completely different set of information that you need in order to drive this program efficiently. And for your information, Philippines is 100 million people spread across multiple islands. So it's a great challenge to countries in adapting and using while they love the security and the privacy that we bring in, the reporting was a big problem. And what we did in the anonymous profile design is a unique way of anonymizing quite a lot of this information in a model where it will allow you to report any of this information without fundamentally violating the privacy of the user, privacy of the data. You would still not be able to identify the record which triggered this information, but you would still know your numbers are absolute, your numbers are good. So it kind of brought in the ability that they wanted to understand what's happening on the field, what's happening within the system. At the same time, it provided us as an ability to prevent from anybody looking at the actual data altogether. So it was a win-win for both the sides, and it took quite some time to actually incorporate design and make sure we are not giving out much information. Long way to go in that space, but I think the first step that we took has been pretty good. We will continue to improve from where we stood and continue to make things easier. At the same time, still protect the privacy and security of the individuals.
So Sasi, in a nutshell, if I understand what you're saying, the ability to generate reports based on PII data like gender, age, the person's whatever, right? The PII data, without revealing what the data is and doing it in an anonymized way, is anonymized reporting. Is that the right way of putting it?
Yep, Krishnan. I think you did it in a short way.
Okay, thank you. Okay, good. Another interesting question. This is something that a lot of us have been thinking about. Anina Wilson is asking a question on open source. Any one of you can come in here, gentlemen. So she says that open source solutions can create some kind of a caution from governments. They're based on assumptions about what it means from a privacy and security perspective, as well as ownership. It's basically things like source code is open, so a security flaw is open. Who will fix it? How will you deal with securities and privacies? That's a very natural concern that anybody would have, and especially with governments are very careful when it comes to security and privacy. So the question is, how have MOSIP been successful in overcoming these kind of views? Anybody can come in.
Yep. I think it's a very good question and a valid concern from a government perspective. But I think the fact that governments are choosing open source solutions is that they have gone through all these questions and answered these before deciding open source is good. And the rationale behind these decisions would be typically like, just because something is closed source doesn't mean that the problem does not exist. At least it's easier to recognize the problems when it is open source, right? As they say, if I close my eyes, the sun doesn't go away. The sun is always there, right? And that it actually provides an advantage. It is possible to get much more eyes and peer reviews on an open source system and solve problems well in advance. The one risk that typically an open source solution has is that if it stops getting supported, then sometimes these updates, security updates, don't happen, right? This impacts many closed source solutions also. A lot of the closed source solutions also use many free open source libraries out there when they are building these applications. So the same risks are there in whatever third-party components we are using. But thanks to various tools like GitHub, as well as SonarQube, and many of these tools that are available, LGTM, a lot of these security issues are flagged. So we have a very robust process where we get alerted about new security vulnerabilities and what problems are there in our code. And second is, I think, as MOSIP, we are very committed to supporting the MOSIP code base itself for a very long time, right? So there is an active support policy behind us. So I think these concerns get alleviated by ensuring that the right practices are put in place and the support being.
Anybody wants to add anything to what Ramesh said?
Sure, Krishnan. So I think the question has technical answers. The question also has quite a lot of political answers, quite a lot of policy answers that the government has to come in. I think technically, yes, we are committed. There is a community behind the scene. We and our community together, we are working to make sure we are safer, secure, trying to get there for better. At the same time, I think at the policy level, the government is also have to make a lot of these decisions. It's not very easy at all to, as a government to make these decisions. But interestingly enough, this space has been well tried. But in the identity, at least, that there has been closed source for almost 30 years. There are several failed ID projects that you would see across the globe in multiple locations. It's not purely technical failures. It could be policy, it could be process, it could be literally everything together. What MOSIP does different is not just about the code that we release it out. It's also about the combination of the code and the best practice on the policies that we think actually works in most of the situations, right? And we are there to work with the countries on the other situations. So it's about the policies, it's about the processes that you have to do to enroll it. It's about the inclusivity that you have to bring in. How would you go about doing it? So when MOSIP engages, it's not just on the technical side, it's also on the advisory side, it's also on the processor side to help them and actually do things on the field far more effectively and efficiently. So, so our ability to achieve what we say and our proven record in multiple countries is driving other countries out of that fear that open sources carry. Absolutely, we all use Linux to run our servers. And it has been one of the best open source components that drives this world. And I think we are aiming in the identity space to be one such foundational system to drive things up forward. We will strive our best to do it, and that's our commitment to the country. And I think it has worked out so far well. Country sees the outcome, and the outcome actually changes their mind as well.
Our country also, in my opinion, is happy that the source code is open and it's not locked with a vendor. And just say if somebody says that there's a flaw in the code, the country has the opportunity to fix it themselves by anybody. Because just like somebody says that it's open, it's flaw, and somebody can actually fix it. The code is there, right? So it's open source is both ways, right? And it's more of multiple views looking at it. The chances of the code getting fixed faster is very high. Okay, good. Now, Sasi, the question on deployment, right? Deployment has been a major point of attraction in MOSIP. And sometimes even, sometimes a point of criticism also, as it is felt that it is very complex, right? There's too many moving parts to be deployed and wired together. What is the story of deployment in 1.2 in terms of how it has been enhanced and what have we done in 1.2 deployment?
Sure, Krishnan. I think the 1.2 deployment has two stories. We actually have two different deployments. One of the deployment is in its beta release. Hopefully, it will be out very soon. The other one is a continuous enhancement of what we call as our sandbox release. We have continuously improved our deployment to drive towards more robustness and security. So I would like that deployment has to do actually two factors. One, it has to reduce the effort of the country in managing such solutions. One of the things that from our 1.3 release all the way till today, one of the things that we have continuously improved is our ability to health check our system using our own APIs and our own mechanisms. That actually helped us quite a lot in getting the manageability part really driven well. Unlike the previous versions where things could fail and the system may not know it and it takes quite a while to come back, we follow a new principle of fail fast. So if you're about to fail, we want to fail it very, very fast. What it does to our system is if you could fail fast, you could also recover faster. And we use this philosophy in our design, and you would see that in the newer, whether it's our sandbox, whether it's our V3 setup. I think there's going to be a different session for V3 setup. Punit is not part of this panel, but I think in the deployment panel, Punit would be there and he would speak about quite a lot about it, how we have enhanced there. But I think the robustness of doing it and tying back to the core part of the system with health checks and other ability to make the system as long as possible alive. And when it has to fail faster, has been our architecture. One of the other interesting thing that we have started working from 1.5 and we have matured it for well is the ability to trace. So then quite a lot of challenge. So if you have multiple web services running and a single transaction binds to multiple web services, now how do you understand failure? How do you trace what happened for a single transaction? Because it crosses the boundaries, it goes across multiple systems. So we have introduced trace IDs from 1.15, but in 1.2 it's absolutely matured. It binds transactions together across web service boundaries. It enables us to debug and look at logs in a far more effective way. Not only just us, it could be for our partners. Those are our learnings from our partners as well. That when they start looking at it and when they start running such systems at high scale with auto scalability and other features, these things becomes essential. And today I would say we are 90% out there. Whatever you could look at, we would have linked it to the trace ID and you would be able to trigger and figure out how the entire thing went in and went out. Reporting is also another important part in deployment, I would say. It has to help people to decide new need for storage. It has to be able to scale automatically to the newer storages. Quite a lot of learnings from our countries of how things run. We have countries which are very aggressive, and we are countries which are very methodical. We see both ends of the spectrum in our work, and I think nothing is wrong. It's about how each country approaches and what situation they are in and what political environment they are in drives these things. There is nothing wrong as long as your process gets followed. We are happy to say that we were able to cater to quite a lot of these things, and a lot of these learnings are now part of 1.2. In fact, we are backporting to 1.15 as well, a lot of these learnings, because quite a lot of countries do exist on 1.15, and we said we will support them continuously to get better. And hopefully they'll move to 1.2 as soon as their political pressure comes down and their need to enroll comes down. They would start going to the newer releases. But yes, both of these are supported, but 1.2 is our LTS. We expect everybody to move on there.
I see one quick question on deployment. I know that the previous versions of MOSIP prior to 1.1.5, you have to have a CentOS server to deploy MOSIP. Is that still the case, or it is any Linux or any operating system for that matter?
So we're not very constrained by it. We are predominantly running it over Docker and Kubernetes at this point in time. Our countries have run it successfully with other container services and OpenShift, completely on OpenShift. We are not very particular about it, but we do tell our SIs that choose the expertise that you have on the field, and then use the platform to do what you want to do rather than on us. So we are pretty open about it, but we will continue to work on open source components. We love open source. We think we can contribute back quite a lot of things, and we have done that. So I think Ramesh has a story about how other communities speak to us and how they work with us to make things better for us. And similarly, we work with them and make things better for the other side. It has been an extensively brilliant journey so far on both the sides, and it's wonderful to have people around who have similar visions, whether it is technologically or by aligned to our other visions. But it's been a wonderful journey so far.
Sure. Thank you, Sasi. Ramesh, coming back to you. See, one thing that attracts people with MOSIP is a technology stack. There's a lot of open source components. Most of them are open source components working with each other, really nicely wired. Each one has got its significance in the technology stack, right? Now, I think all of us here would like to understand what changes have been made to the technology stack, what are the additions that are there, and maybe updates and even deletions, if possible. If you can explain in a bit more detail, that'll be very wonderful.
Sure, Krishnan. So I think the technology stack related changes, we are trying to keep it at a very manageable level. We don't want to just keep changing things every other release. But on the other hand, we also want to make sure that we are using the right technology stacks for the solution to go live. So we have, over the last few minor releases, which have culminated into 1.2, adopted loads of new technologies. One major standout probably is Kafka, which has come into our fold in the sense that we had our process communication for the registration processor, which was using a custom event bus on Vertex. We moved it to Kafka in order to be able to manage back pressure as well as regulate and manage it much better. And we also have used Kafka and other components, and so that's one big addition to the stack. We talked about monitoring, manageability, and also Prometheus has come in as one major toolkit, and we have reporting on top of that using the Grafana I think visualization tools. Apart from this, for anonymous profiling as well as various reporting, basic reporting, we have also brought in Elasticsearch, Apache Spark, and so on. And so with these new additions for these new modules, we have plenty of newcomers in terms of technology. Also on the deployment side, whatever is in beta, you will see Helm. We used to do a lot of Ansible earlier. Now we are a little less Ansible heavy. We have more Helm charts. We have Rancher that has come in for better deployment management, and you will see probably more enhancements keep happening. From being predominantly Java, I think other languages have started creeping in. We have Python a little bit, mostly on the deployment and reporting side. And we also, apart from Angular, I think we are going to have, with our new mobile ID and Android solutions that we are working on, you will start seeing, and iOS solutions, you'll start seeing other languages also coming into the fold. We haven't really retired anything much as such, except probably move away from the older version of Java into Java 11. I think that has been, Java 8 has been phased out of our solutions. And apart from actual core technology, I would say that we also have started using other components like libsodium for encryption. Cryptography is something that has started coming in because we are dealing with mobile solutions and something that also has to work with desktop. We have WebSub as a protocol. We have worked with the Ballerina open source solution to actually use their WebSub implementation and they went out of the way to build a newer version with some of the enhancements that we needed, right? So it was feedback from our side on practical application in the field, which they incorporated and to give a new version to us. So there are several interesting introductions, and I think WebSub is going forward going to play a critical role in the interoperability and integration landscape when it comes to whole of government solutions also. So the messaging between applications over HTTP, where systems talk to each other and notify, are through that. One example of where we have used it is our ongoing work with OpenCRVS, where we are integrating with them. We get notified about births and deaths and critical life events which affect the life cycle of the ID from the CRVS system. And we also actually notify other applications about key events such as information change or identity status change. So all these use messaging protocols, and we expect WebSub to play a major role there.
So, Ramesh, if I understand what you're saying, you touched upon various technologies in 1.2 in the technology stack, and you also talked about WebSub and data share. If I understand, not every country would start from scratch. They may have some ID system in some form where they would have stored their biometrics, demographic details, and they want to graduate to MOSIP in some form, and they want to actually work with, because a lot of money has been spent on the ID system, that they're okay to actually move towards an open source technology like MOSIP. But they want to actually have some kind of a event and data sharing mechanism with external systems. So is WebSub and data share is the answer to that?
It's one of the possible answers. There are many solutions that are there, and not one size fits everyone. But I believe that a simple data share mechanism and a webhook notification is very easy to implement, brings in security, privacy, reliability, makes things asynchronous rather than real time, allowing for very loosely coupled integration between systems, which can be achieved with the least amount of intervention. I would say that this approach probably takes care of 80 to 90% of the integration needs between various government departments. When it comes to tighter integrations, there are specific special purpose web APIs, queues, and integration ESBs, and many other measures can actually be brought in, right? But for simple loosely coupled integration, this is a very powerful way to actually get interoperability between applications. Our standards efforts will also go in trying to see how we can standardize the messages that is the language of communication between these applications, right? So that's where standardization needs to come in. While data share and WebSub provide the technology infrastructure, the ability to interact and interoperate and integrate comes from the common language. So standards around that are there. There are, for example, HL7, FHIR, and all provide standards around health records and information exchange around that. Similarly, in the identity space, both foundational and functional identity around eligibility and all, we are trying to actually get some standards related efforts going. We are consulting various parties and trying to learn and see how we can actually bring in some common speak for applications to be able to easily interact with each other.
Yeah, very, very interesting, Ramesh. I see there are more questions coming in, but some of the questions we will take it at the end. But one interesting question, Naga, this may be of interest to you, which is actually being asked in one of the members. See, Naga, you have been let me try to put it in my own words. I do understand what the gentleman is saying. See, you have been championing the SI ecosystem, the partner management program, working with various partners. While this is not directly related to 1.2, many of us are interested in knowing, as a system integrator, how could I learn MOSIP and how do I get to become a MOSIP compliant partner? I mean, both from an existing MOSIP compliance one, maybe I'm already compliant with a version of MOSIP, or I may be completely new. So what are the opportunities that MOSIP offers in learning and being compliant with MOSIP as an SI partner?
Yeah. A year back, we launched a program called MOSIP Partner Program. This is pretty much a compliance program that we launched, so that the SIs can really get benefited out of it and get compliant as part of MOSIP. We have published a very detailed guideline on what is the expectation, what do they really get out of this program, and what are the benefits they really derive out of this program. In our partner ecosystem link, probably we can share that across in this panel. On a nutshell, what we really try to do is we expect the SIs, the potential SIs, to dedicate 2 or 3 people, 2 Java people and 1 DevOps guys, to participate in the program. It's an extremely pragmatic program. It's not like a industry. Like one of the programs in the commercial industry ecosystem. It's an extremely pragmatic program. You can do that program based on your own timeline and speed, and based on the availability of time in your organization. What we do is we do a kickoff meeting with you, and based on the number of people available and the time you are willing to complete that program, we form a curriculum for you. And it's pretty much a self-based way of learning, but we orient you in the right direction on what is the step 1, step 2, step 3. You need to learn so that you can pretty quickly understand the MOSIP platform and start delivering programs. Weekly once we arrange for a huddle session, like a 1 hour or 2 hour huddle session, where the SI, the engineers from the SI are given an opportunity to present what they have understood, or ask doubts and stuff, and and more of a collaboration activity. We also open a Slack channel for you, so that if you have any doubts or clarifications, you can post it, and on a best case basis, we try and reply back to you. And the highlight is, at the end of the program, you need to deploy and showcase the MOSIP flow end to end in your environment. That means to say you really understood MOSIP, and you can now showcase MOSIP end to end to us. See, this gives a lot of confidence to the countries and the adapters of MOSIP, that that indeed this SI is compliant with MOSIP, and he will be capable of delivering programs. We of course list your company name, company logo and stuff in MOSIP website under the SI page. This is a great ecosystem initiative. Till now, from last year till now, almost 11 partners, SI partners, have got onboarded. Thanks a lot for all your support and getting it done. Krishnan, this program is not version dependent. So if you have got complaint in the previous version, we don't force you to get again do this complaints again for the new version. See, it's an upgrade, right? It's not like you learn everything from the scratch, when you move to a new version. So, but the SI who has got complaint using the previous version, if they want to upgrade and stuff, if they want any support in that, we are more than happy to provide them.
So how do they get to know about the new changes in MOSIP? Is there a documentation provided? Are there videos provided? Can you tell a little bit more about it?
Yeah, we have an exhaustive documentation that we have provided as part of MOSIP website. They have, see, once you get onboarded as an SI, right, you have access to the ecosystem. Now you have access to MOSIP trainers and stuff, so they can always reach out to us, and they can ask, and we can guide them through that particular step.
Thank you. Good. Thank you.
I think thanks Sanjit. Thanks Sanjit. Sanjit has posted that link where you can download the guidelines for the MOSIP partner program. Thank you, Sanjit.
Yeah. Thank you, Naga. I think we have come to the end of the Fireside Chat. In the interest of time, we have to go to the next agenda. I think there's always the thirst to and eagerness to know more. I'm sure that more webinars and more deep dive into some of these technologies would be happening in due course. But then, gentlemen, thank you very much for your valuable time, your thoughts, have been very profound and has given us some good insights about MOSIP 1.2. So do stay back. If we have time, please we'll be answering more and more questions. Okay, now moving on, guys. The next agenda is a show and tell. We're starting with one of the features. We'll start with the multi-language support. Sasi, welcome back again. Please tell us what is multi-language support, and I'm sure that we are going to have a demonstration also. Over to you, Sasi.
Sure, Krishnan. Okay. So I think we will continue with multiple webinars to speak about our feature, but you can consider this as one of the key feature that we wanted to speak about in our first talk. There are obviously several things that we could talk about, but I would be specific about language. I think that's a big barrier that we create, whether it's a digital barrier because of the language of knowing computers and understanding computers, or it's about speaking a specific language or speaking a specific language that the other individual does not understand. So this is a story that we have been working at least for 3-4 months. From the time we heard about it, we had a lot of discussion with the Sri Lanka team to understand how the requirement works and other stuff. And it eventually culminated to what you see here. So I'm going to share my screen and I'll walk you through some of the key things that are part of the solution. I hope everybody can look at my screen. My screen is visible, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So before, oh, okay, looks like if I share, I can't. Okay. Let me just open the docs just to make sure I make everybody aware of how different we look at languages. Right, and how countries would adapt, how SI would integrate them. So let me look at this. This should give us the right set. Okay, here we go. Okay, so if you look at the information about language specifically in our documentation, we speak about 3 unique ways that we use languages, right? We call languages with mandatory languages, optional languages, user-selected language, and preferred language. Each one has its own purpose, and if you look at the way it evolves and way it gets used, is very, very specific to how you would reach to the end user, and how do you cater to governments which adapt it, or the system integrators who are supposed to do this, right? Just as a clearance, we use ISO 639-2 as our standard, so which means our languages will be three letters, not 2 letters. Most of you would have been used to I-18 N files with 2-letter languages, but 639 involves quite a lot of additional languages. And we think that's the advantage of using a newer set, and it's also the advantage to be inclusive in nature in incorporating all these languages. So you would see in MOSIP the 3-letter languages in more often. Right. So let me come to the mandatory languages. So mandatory languages are something that the government thinks it's an official language. So quite a lot of times when you work with the government, we come across where they say a certain set of languages as official languages. And this could vary by a region of the country. Or it could be common for the country, but there should be a certain mandatory language that they mandate. It's not essential that you should have a mandatory language in our system, but it is just if in case a government comes across and says that there's a need for me to make sure everybody has to, at least in one of this language, they have to make an entry, then you can make them as mandatory language. So it will force a mandatory information to it. I'll compare it with the demo, and I walk you through the demo, how the mandatory language works within the system. Then you have optional languages. So optional languages are list of languages that are spoken or written in the specific country, because of the way the culture and because of the way that you evolve over time. Language also evolves over time, and there are multiple languages that the country ends up being adapted, and people are always closely attached to the language that they are born with, and mother tongue is part and parcel of how you look at yourself. So optional languages provides an ability to provide an elaborate mode list of languages where the user could possibly select, right? So that's where the user selection comes in. In our system, we let the user to select what language he prefers. And remember, we have two kinds of users within our system. One is the operator himself, and the other is the person who would be for whom we are actually providing the service. So we could call them as the registrant, right? So you need to cater to both these individuals, and both could be coming from different languages. And remember, auto transliteration is built into our system, so we could auto transliterate quite a lot of wordings into our system today. So yeah, an operator could be from a different language. The registrant could be from a different language, and we would want a way to interact between them and provide an identity. So it allows for the user selected language. And the fourth one is the preferred language. So when the user actually completes its registration, how do you communicate to the user? So it's not the government which communicates, it's a system that indirectly communicates with them. And we want to make sure we communicate in a way that the end user understands it, and which is the registrant understands it. And that's where the preferred language comes in, right? So all this are different ways in which we use the language within our system to enable more inclusive nature of how our system gets used, right? And in terms of configuration, these are the two configurations that you would use within our system. And obviously you need to give the resource files, the I18N files for the multiple languages. And in case if anybody is interested in contributing back labels for our for any of the languages, you're more than welcome. Please provide us the contribution. It'll help you, it'll help us, it'll help quite a lot of people in adopting it. Our repository is at the Artifactory. You can raise a pull request to us, or you can speak to us in our community.mosip.io site. You could raise the questions. We will be more than happy to address it. Okay. As you understand these four languages, let me walk you through the system. So this is our V3 deployment. The entire deployment runs over a WireGuard system. It's not publicly accessible, even though you would see the public domain and everything. You will not be able to access it on the public. So here, let me go through the pre-registration quickly. So if you see here, this is what the user selects. So I have three languages here. So it could be English, it could be the French, or it could be the Arabic one. And you see the RTL automatically taking into effect based on what language. So I understand English better. I'm going to use the English for now.
Sasi, one sec. Can you just zoom in a little bit? The fonts are a little smaller. This is good. This is good.
Is this good enough?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, this is fine.
Okay. Okay. This is a testing system. So I have hard-coded to a known easy number to type in. So I'm not waiting for the mail. While the mail did arrive to me, I'm not. Can you look at that? Okay. So now if you look at it as a user, I logged in with a specific language, and this is our pre-registration portal. That what you're seeing. It could be an assisted model, or it could be the user self-enrolling himself in the system. So in an assisted model, I would log in with the language that I would know. So that is where the login language comes in. In case of a self one, I may be knowing a language and I would log in with the language. And if you see here, one of the first choices that our system says is that you have options of 3 languages, but as per the current configuration in our demonstrative purposes, we have configured English as a mandatory language here. So you don't get a choice to remove English, but you get a choice to use the other 2 languages. So for this example, I would choose Arabic. I would choose French as well, so that I can demonstrate that a little more better. And I click submit, and I get a terms and agreement, and all 3 languages shows up in this terms and agreements, right? It's a quick thing. So I accept. Now you would see, so this looks better when I reduce it a little more. Krishnan, I hope this is a little okay. Or should I?
Yeah, that's okay. That's all right. That's fine. This is okay.
Okay. So if you look here, we have all the 3 languages being listed here. So it's not that we want you to enter in different languages at different time. So you type in your full name here. So let me type in Sasi. It could auto transliterate if there is a transliteration engine, but it does not understand my name, obviously. So you have the virtual keyboards attached to each of these cases. You could choose to fill in using these virtual keyboards the information. So this allows you to use multiple languages within our system in a very systematic fashion. So for example, in this case, I choose a gender. It is available in both the selected languages. So these are our values which are already there. So the transliterations are available for these values. So they show up immediately. But for a name, transliterations are very, very difficult. So that's why you don't see a good transliteration there out here. But this, if you look at the screen and the way it is structured, it allows you to type in all the data right in the same screen. You don't need to move around in multiple screens. If you are in the assisted mode, you will have to keep changing languages based on the house that you visit. So for example, if you look at our Philippines implementation, one of the things that Philippines did is that they actually had an on-home enrollment. So they actually walked into individuals' home and then they pre-registered the individuals. And one of the essential thing in pre-registration that you would look at is from the first home to the second home, the languages could change. Their preference could change, and we do allow an ability to change the language once again here, so that an operator could choose the language which he is okay with. And when you go to the next home, you could choose that, okay, the individual only understands this language. You can just choose this language and then start filling in with that particular language in here. So if you look at it, our system automatically reflects to this need. It's only Arabic now, and there's only 2 fields out here. So this kind of enabled both the ways to look at you as a self-enrolled person, at the same time in assisted mode. Both kind of culminated together, and we were able to address that in this particular mode. So that is where, if you now compare it with the configuration, okay. I'm finding it a little difficult to access that tab out here. Okay, so you would, if you compare it now, you would see that there is a mandatory language that you saw there. English was made as mandatory, and you would see here, you would see the optional language where the user was able to select his own. We call that as the user selected language. It could be one or multiple that we support. Then obviously the preferred language is the way in which you want to be communicated with. Right now, let me quickly go to administrative side to just show you how do we think in the administrative side of it. So you saw the user side of it in this, right? And I'll show you how would we look at from an administrative side. And this is one of the centers. So I'm just going to edit one of these centers out here so that you get a better view. So if you look at here, I have English here. Obviously, I selected English as the language that I understand. So the English shows up. And you can see that I have a French information automatically available. I also have Arabic information automatically available. So both these informations are automatically available. And if you go further down, there are certain fields within the system which has, for example, the contact number, right? The contact number has no language. And any field which literally has no language or are supposed to be used in a single language would automatically show up here. So these are obviously it need not be only in English. Because I selected English, it's showing up in English. If I have selected in Arabic, the entire regular word would have come in Arabic and similar way, right? The transliteration automatically happens, and you would see the screen absolutely doing what you think is essential. And at the best ace of administration, and across the country you would have people from multiple languages working on this project, and we need to make them feel home. And how do we make them feel home is something that was essential, because the success of the program lies in everybody enthusiastic about the identity system, and everybody enthusiastic about providing this identity to the individual. And as I said, language plays a vital role in binding them to this digital system. And I would say we have worked really hard to make this happen. And I think it has been excellent when we demonstrated to multiple countries, and when they started using these systems. There is a sense of relief in terms of how effectively the system brings in language and the ease of use with multiple languages, and the barrier that we break with this has been really appreciative from the countries. And any feedback that you have when you're using the system, and you as an SI or as a country, we would be more than happy to take it and work towards making it more and more inclusive. So at its core, we want to make the system closer to you when you use the system. It could be an administrator, it could be an user, it could be an operator, it could be the government, but we want it to be closer to you at any point in time. That's our goal. Obviously, I can't do a full demonstration mode. It's a very short demonstration. Hopefully, we will have more time in later webinars where we could do full demonstrations for you.
Thank you, Sasi. I think that's a pretty good illustration of how a multi-language support from an inclusiveness point of view can be visualized in MOSIP. One quick question. Now, if I want to add a fourth language, right, how easy it is in MOSIP 1.2 to do that? So
Krishnan, it's just about the two configuration values that I showed you. You just go there and add up a newer language in there, and that's pretty much all it's needed. It is as best as we could get there, and obviously we would like people to contribute a lot more I-18N files so that it could make things better. We are not very good at transliteration. We are trying our best to make and interact with people across multiple countries and translate these things to a better way. But a help there would be very, very appreciative about.
Definitely, yeah. Thank you, Sasi. Ramesh, just one last question. I think we are close to closing the webinar. We are already past the time, but one interesting question, one last question is, the code name is called Asymmetric Amoeba. It's a very interesting name, right? So we would like to know what has been the thought behind the name.
That's actually a very interesting question. And if you ask different team members in MOSIP, you will get different answers to this, right? It means many things. There are layers to this. And I will share one interesting way of looking at it, right? See, the needs of a country when it tries to work with the diversity of its population and all, there's no one size fits all, right? Amoeba is something that can take various shapes on the basis of what it requires according to its environment, right? So that's one of the beauties of that organism. And we are trying to make MOSIP as configurable, as module, and as custom, and as easy to shape it to the needs of the adopters, right? So that's why we think of ourselves, our first release, as an attempt at being like an amoeba, which can be fit into the needs exactly. And the other thing is also that the amoeba is a single-celled organism, and we hope to evolve from our first version into something much more capable, much more sentient, and larger over a period of time. So it's just is our starting point of the evolution of MOSIP.
Thank you. Interesting answer. Very, very, very related, in my opinion. Thank you, Ramesh. All right. We have come to the end of the webinar. Just one thing I just want to add here is we've started doing a deep dive from this webinar onwards, right? We had a Fireside Chat, and we jumped into the one of the most important features called multi-language support, demonstrated by Sasi. What we intend to do in upcoming webinars, we don't know the duration, maybe monthly. We are just working out the time periods. But what we intend to do is to deep dive into some of the enhancements and features of MOSIP through a live demonstration. So you will hear more from us. So please make sure that you attend those webinars and learn more from looking at how the feature works and how it is technically designed, and we intend to do all that in about a webinar of about 45 minutes duration. We are working out, and we'll let you know how this is going to come out. So thank you very much. You've been very patientful in listening to us. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, all the panelists. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Professor, for sharing your thoughts. A recording of this webinar will be available in our official YouTube channel, probably in a day's time. I request you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and as it is normally said in social media, please press the bell icon to get notification. I'm going to say the same thing again. Okay. So anyway, the idea is to get notifications and get to know more about what we are doing. Let me thank all of you for being a wonderful participant. Some of the unanswered questions will be answered within this week. But we hope that we did a decent job in this webinar by sharing our thoughts. Thank you very much. Until then, until we see in the next webinar, be safe, be happy, and have a wonderful day. Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.